now we thought of it after
This meeting is being recorded.
After getting the information of Makino Priscilla, we decided to have the archives. And we have really gone to places. We went with the Beth to various places. I went to UK to various places in Birmingham to know more about the archives. Then we came about to know how we can go about it. Mary came to Kenya, even though Marian will explain more about it. And that is how the archive started. So from the oral history, we are like, we want to know how we can go about the early Quakers in Kenya, in Africa, in Uganda, in Tanzania, how they used to work so that our early children can learn the same. We can use the same in our training on Sunday school. And that is how the archive began. And we are working on it. We have had various meetings with the various groups. And the last meeting we had in December, we were at Kaimosi. We were having a workshop on how to keep records and how to collect the information we want from the elderly people who are passing on, because the time is not on our side. We have tried to collect some videos of these elderly people, but we are still collecting more. So for now, I'll give Marian time to continue. And for the friends who might not know me, I am Pastor Judith Nandikove. I travel in the ministry. Most of you, I think I have met you, I know you. And those maybe who don't know me, I am Judith Nandikove. My internet might not be stable because I am traveling. I have had a funeral of our church member. So I am traveling from western part of Kenya to Nairobi, the capital city of Kenya. Thank you so much. Marian, you continue. But in case there is anywhere I can answer any question or whatever, you need to know more about the archives, I am ready to come in and talk. Thank you so much. Be blessed.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Judith. Thank you, Judith. Yes, we gathered and were able to start the archives. And as we did that, we were located, the gathering of the Sunday school teachers was located in Kaimosi at the Friends Theological College. And so the group that was formed went to Robert Wafula, who is the head of the theological college, to see if he would be interested in having an archives. And if you'd like to have an archives located at his college, it seemed to be the obvious place to collect the materials. And it turns out that had been a dream of his, because years ago when he was in the States, he worked under Tom Ham and discovered the value of all the old records he could find of Kenya that were out in Richmond, Indiana. So he'd always wanted it. So he agreed. And so we gathered a committee and we have started. And so after we started, the next thing was to try and figure out what kind of simple apparatus can we use to collect materials that is easily available in Kenya or anywhere else, and not complicated and easy to replace if need be. So we searched all around, and what we came up with is to use a smartphone. You don't have to have expensive equipment from the States. You take a smartphone, and instead of taking a video, which uses up a tremendous amount of space and memory, you actually just get the apparatus of recording, and you make a good recording. And then in addition, we got small little microphones, those little lapel ones you can stick on your collar for the one who is speaking. And we also got small little portable tripods, some which are just small and can just fit on a table and be put near the person who is speaking, to make the smartphone steady. And that seems to work pretty well. So we tested it out. And the next thing, before we tested it, we figured out, well, who should we interview? Where should we start? And we made a list of a lot of people. And then out of those people, we particularly wanted not just whoever was the presiding clerk or the big man of a particular time, but who had an interesting life that would be of value to share with the next generation, and people who would be mentors. Excuse me. So the first interview we actually did was with Enoch Rungu, who's 100 years old at the time. But he was in a wheelchair, his body was giving out, but his mind was very clear. And so we said, this is a good one to start with. And as we started, we asked him where he was born and which village, expecting it to be that he was from Shandarema. And he said, I'm from Laranda, which surprised us. So we said, well, who was the first person to become a Quaker in Laranda? And he said, Johanna Lamwaji. And then later, when we asked him, who was your mentor out of all the elders? He said, Johanna Lamwaji. And then he began to talk very excitedly about this wonderful person that a few of us had actually met and many people knew nothing about. And even his grandchildren who were sitting there were amazed. He became alive. He was just so excited sharing the story of his mentors. And so then one of the other people we interviewed was Gladys Kangai. Some of you may have met her because she was the head of the African section of FWCC. And she also was the one who really got the USFW, all the women in Kenya, organized. And so we went to her and we actually discovered, as we were mentioning what our project was, she said, oh, well, I used to be a Sunday school teacher from the time I was a teenager. And so she was eager to share about that. And so she shared with us. And she also especially shared about when she was a young girl. She was taught to always have a pumpkin ready, or winter squash, always have a bed ready, always have some water ready, and be ready to welcome visitors and to take care of them and have a place to sleep and even massage their feet. Well, it turns out what she was talking about was back in the early days when there was only one yearly meeting in all of East Africa, and there was no public transport. People walked all the way to Kaimosi from Bungoma or from Kisumu or other places, and it might take them 3 days or 5 days. And she was one of the places, not being the Underground Railroad, but the sort of above railroad, a place where they could rest and have their feet washed up and have good food and sleep and be able to continue their journey. Because as we first was listening to the tape, those who didn't know that said, what is she talking about? And so we've also discovered that in addition to actually getting the tape, we will need some of those of us who have some idea of what they're talking about with something that might not be common in other parts of the world, that we need to add a footnote and explain a few things like that. And then another one we enjoyed was going to interview Herman Otieko Jaika from Gabalachi. And he was a young person who was the first one who went to work in Turkana and spent like almost 20 years, his working life, working way up in the desert in the northern Kenya. And when we went to that particular interview, we were given a ride by the general secretary of the yearly meeting. And he said, oh, I'll give you a ride to there, but I'm a very busy person. I'll drop you off and you can find your own way back. Well, when we got there and we started interviewing, that person got so fascinated. He stayed, he asked questions, he stayed the whole time and gave us a ride to the next place because he did not realize he had some very important person right in his own area. And sometimes we forget. As years go by, we forget our history, and there's some interesting people we need to visit. Unfortunately, both the Enoch died at 102 just recently, all during COVID, and then Gladys also died. But we've also interviewed about 4 or 5 others, and so the next thing we had to do is, how do you take an oral thing and transcribe it and get it in written form so that a good copy can be easy available for a researcher? So we have Walter Milenia, who has started in Kakamega, and he has helped us to start to transcribe. And one of the things we did is we had him accompany us to one of the next ones that we were interviewing, which was a person he knew, who was the only remaining daughter of Johanna Lamwaji. And when we went there, Agneta was helping us doing the interviewing, and she discovered that Dina particularly liked speaking in the Lesotho dialect of the Luya language. And so she began translating at the same time as asking the questions. And when she began to describe what it was like in Sunday school way back, she just automatically burst into the Luya songs of the traditional songs they sang way back in the early 1900s. And we all just joined in with her. We couldn't help it. She had great joy. So we're finding it interesting to do this work. And we will be housing all the records, the actual original tapes will be kept at Nairobi at an office of QREC that has been developed. And QREC is one of the few groups that in East Africa is created an, what do you call it? Not an NGO, but a group, and been registered by the government without being officially under the church, and thus under the men. It was all under women as their leaders. So it makes it much easier to get some assistance when people want to, or grants. So we have been working on it. And then since then, we have started to, we did have a workshop, the first workshop for people in East Africa. And we chose just a representative who were active of all different kinds of groups. It wasn't just the presiding clerks, but instead we chose, because we knew we didn't want any specific group, because the project is run, the oral part is done by QREC, and the written part is done at FTC, which is under FUM. And we're expecting to be creating a thing for all of Africa, and then it's going to be partially under FWCC. So we don't want to have it under the care of one particular yearly meeting or one particular group. And so we have created that. And then we had a workshop at FTC and invited, the one who led it was Jane Mutasio, whom when we we thought we were going to have to start from scratch. And we went to the Nairobi archives, the National Archives of Kenya. And we were surprised to discover there were 2 Quakers working there. And that somebody back in 1970 had collected all the original records that they had in Kaimosi and taken them to Nairobi for safekeeping, which is very smart because after all the splits, there was a lot of damage and things could have easily gotten lost. So we at least had the first 70 years, some of the records. And we also discovered that Jane Matasio, one younger woman, had recently done her master's thesis on how to create a Friends Archives. If that's not a miracle, I don't know what is. So we had her give this presentation, and others who were wondering what actually is this, when they saw her presentation with a PowerPoint and all the proper ways, they're saying, wow, this really is something. And we're really excited about it. And the other thing we've realized is, in addition to just doing the oral material, we will need a copy that will go into FTC at the college. And as a result, we're going to also have to make a building, extend the library, because the library is not big enough. It's only in one little room at the moment. And so we've actually gotten a design for the building, an architectural design. And so we will be starting to work on that as well. So why don't I switch to the slides? I think the slides will give you a good picture.
Marian, I'm sorry, the slides would not download.
Oh dear.
I've tried them 4 times and it just didn't work. So let's figure out how to proceed without the slides.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I might mention that one of the things that happened was that, as Judith was talking about going to the States and discovering QREC and wanting to have something like that in Africa, we invited Beth and Melinda, who's from Philadelphia, to come and lead the workshop. And then I was appointed to try and find the top 20 most active Sunday school teachers in East Africa. And I have been working in Uganda and Tanzania, and we discovered they were having 40 to 100 children coming to each of their local meetings, and there's nothing for the kids. So we had started Sunday school teaching and finding out who had some skills that way. And then I searched around through various people, because I usually work with women in Kenya, to find those active ones. And so we came to Kenya, to the FTC, and in Kaimosi is where Friends started. And most of the ones who came had never been in Kaimosi, because they're not presiding clerks and the older people who have had a special reason or been invited to come. And so they're really excited as younger and middle-aged men and women to come. And that made them fascinated to learn more about their history. And then when I shared the story of Priscilla Machino, who is a woman from Elgon East and who traveled extensively in Uganda and elsewhere in ministry. She was somewhat like an Elizabeth Hooton, if anybody knows Elizabeth Hooton, of the first woman minister in England. She was like that for Kenya. And she didn't care what yearly meeting she belonged to. She was just busy sharing about Friends and getting on with the work in the good ministry. So, so perhaps I can stop and see what questions people have, what you're curious about. Maybe if you can raise your hands. Nancy.
I I'm interested in the content of some of these stories.
Yeah, we that's another thing I forgot to mention. One of the other things we did is we made up a list of the kinds of questions to ask of anybody. It wasn't just the name and where you're from and that kind of thing. But one of the questions we really wanted to know was, what difference does it make in your life to be a friend? And who were your mentors? What were the challenges you may have met? How did you even become a friend in the first place? Some of those kinds of things beyond the just statistics of who they were. And then if we knew the person had a particular experience, like through FWCC or USFW, we would then ask further about some of those things. Oh,
Marian, I just pulled up the oral history method that.
Oh, great.
There we go.
Yeah. Because with the method, we figured out the phone and you arrange the time, you arrive on time or early, because in Africa, you don't tend to arrive at things on time. But particularly when you're dealing with older people, if you tell them you're going to gather at a certain time, that's usually the best time that they're the most active and able to deal with it. So it's good to come at a right time. And then you test out the voice recorder and you take a brief recording just to see if it works and if you can hear the results. You find a place that's not noisy, avoid the windy kind of places, and ask people to turn off their cell phones and put the cell phone you're using on the airplane mode so you don't get incoming calls. And you set up the tripod in a secure place as close to the person. And also the other thing is during this COVID is to make sure you've cleaned off the microphone each time. And you practice briefly, and you take a photo of the person before taping, and then later you usually take one afterwards. And then we had a sort of standard way of, a few basic things so that we'll know who it was and when and where when this interview was done. And then you make sure you take a photo, because often the photo afterwards, they're going to be smiling and, more lively.
Excuse me, Marian, Nancy has her hand up.
And then you also do ahead of time, make sure they have agreed and signed that they can be interviewed, and they agree that this can go into the archives. Yes, Nancy, did you have a further question?
I wanted to know the content of some of these stories.
The content, we're going to create the stories from the tapes. The content is finding out all those answers to all those questions. And that often gives us an idea of how to put the story together. So that because for example, if we could interview the first woman who all during the time as the yearly meetings were splitting and their husbands were all quarreling amongst themselves, the women just gathered for a cup of tea and said, let's just pray together informally. And gradually they started praying, and now they normally, that has developed from one or two people to 7 to 14, and now they have 3,000 to 5,000 women gather 3 times a year for a full day of prayer. So stories like that, you get that from that interview, and you sometimes have to add things that other people have done. So that when we found out, we have some information about Johanna Lumwaji from the older man, and from Marungu, and then we went and interviewed the last remaining daughter. So you begin to get a fuller picture about that one person. We're trying to do, sometimes it takes interviews of several people before you get a full story.
Excuse me, Marian, could I add one comment?
Sure.
For example, in the story of Gladys Kangai, I noticed that the shape of the story was almost like a spiral. And someone in the United States might think the story would be an arc, sort of with a beginning, a middle, and an end. But Gladys's story was like a spiral. And someone would name a gift and give her a task, and then she would complete the task, and someone would say, wow, Gladys really is gifted. Let's give Gladys another opportunity to grow in nurturing the life of her faith community. And they'd give Gladys another task, and then Gladys would accomplish that. And so we need to come to the stories ready to receive them for what they are in and of themselves, and be careful how much we bring our expectations of what we think we'll find. Mm-hmm. And just to know, Oscar Lagusa's in our circle, and he'll be giving a workshop next Saturday on nurturing strong Quaker roots in our youth. And that theme of naming gifts, giving a task, supporting them while they accomplish the task, and then giving them another task as their gifts unfurl and grow, seems to be a vital piece of the way Quakerism in Africa thrived. Mm-hmm. So I think that's just a great lesson for friends everywhere. Okay, thanks.
And the one other thing, in Africa, most history is shared orally. It's not been written down. And if it has been written, it's usually been written by either Americans working there, or British overseas people, or because of their culture, or it's written by a man who's trying to prove that he was more important than somebody else. So we found the oral history, and we're having to learn a lot more about Kenyan tradition. The oral history is the really key part, and the key part is to listen and not assume we know what they're going to say. Because
Marian,
it's very different.
Marian, this is Janet. Yeah. My video is not working, so I'm just going to ask the question. I think where Nancy's heading with her question is the actual recordings or transcripts. Are those available to people? Now, obviously, most of us don't speak Swahili or the local dialects, but are those available somewhere to see or hear? Right.
We have finished transcribing the first one. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to, we have the transcription, and then we're also trying to add on to that a few of the information about some of the other things that she has written, or clues of other things, so that we have, and we were actually able to give send the tape of Enoch, the 100-year-old, was sent to their family when he was about to die at 102. Oh yeah, this is Charles Wahisi, the first general secretary of all of East Africa, and who's still very active in his 90s. So, yeah. Thanks, Janet. That's helpful. Nancy, did you still have another question? Or haven't we answered it properly?
So as I understand it, the stories, the process of being not developed, but brought together.
Right.
Okay, that's yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we're hoping to take these and within this year try and get at least one official story ready to send out to all of East Africa and the rest of the world.
One more thing. So I know you said somebody was actually doing the transcription. There are some online tools. Some of them are free. Some of them you get like a free trial that will do transcriptions for you and translations. So it might be worth looking into as a point.
I know you can do translations because I've done that with Spanish.
Right. And there's also speech to text where you can do the transcriptions too.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if they might not support the local dialects, but they probably support Swahili.
Yeah. Thank you. We'll look into that. Other questions? Yes, Oscar.
Yes, I just wanted to know if I saw a picture of Wahisi.
Yeah.
Is it the most recent one?
No, we did him last year. The most recent was Sammy Sore.
Okay. I was just like, that is 90 years or okay.
Yeah, he's in his 90s, but still in amazingly good shape.
Yeah, and about the transcribing apps, I think it can be a challenge because like translating from Kiswahili to English and maybe local dialects. I've tried that, but it didn't work. So it'd just be good maybe to use the manual way, which I'm also using now, and it's working.
Yeah. Because there are several. The older people of previous generations often learn English more than Swahili. And so sometimes when they're speaking, they are speaking in English. But occasionally we'll lapse in, put one word of Swahili or in Luya into Asuka or Bukusu or some other dialect.
I've seen that on, when we are doing the Zoom meeting, you will see as people speak and the words are being transcribed. Like when you are speaking here in Kenya, the English could be different from America. So you'll see the words not, being the same with what is being spoken. So that's a challenge at some point.
Yeah. You're right. Is Judith still on? Does she have anything to add?
I think, let's see, we've got a big group. Let me keep looking. Judy, are you still on? I don't know that she is. She may have lost the signal on the road.
Oh, I might mention that at the first workshop, we were just sharing what we're just getting set up, and we're still trying to make sure we figure out how you get all the transcripts written and all that kind of thing before we have a whole lot of people out running with the equipment trying to collect them all. We're trying to gather a whole bunch of people who can help in the transcription as well as the transcribing. And one thing we also found is that if the person who is transcribing knows the person and knows how they talk, their mannerisms, and has actually been there when the interview takes place. It's much easier to do the transcription.
Okay, Marian, Judy is back.
Oh, good. Judy, do you have anything to add? I see her moving around.
Here we go. I'm going to ask her to unmute. All right, well, Judy figures that out. It's been a delight to walk with this process. And as I would read the first transcribed story from Gladys Kangai, there were things that Marian knew the significance about immediately. And they just washed over me because I wasn't aware what it was to walk to yearly meeting, how many days of effort and arduous toil that would be. So I think along with the transcription should be a little explanation for those of us who don't live in East Africa, so that we can understand the truth and the richness of the experience, and we don't gloss over things that are highly significant if we only understood more. So there are just many facets of learning that have to go on as we participate.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, is Judy?
We've also found that some of the younger people in Kenya don't know their history, that they would not pick that up either, not just the Americans.
Okay, I think Judy's working on coming in. We'll see.
I can see her in the car.
Yeah, it's pretty noisy. Judy, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Beth, I'm sorry, my internet is not stable.
Okay, thank you.
I request Marian to continue because I think and my internet is not stable, so I can't much. Maybe I just write on the chat. I'm very, very sorry for this. I'm sorry. I hope you understand.
No problem. Thank you.
Go ahead and maybe you can just write something about the archives on the chat.
I might see if there's some way we can get that, brief little slideshow available to send to the people who are here, afterwards, if need be. Once I can have someone help and make it so that it's easily transmittable. A more power savvy person than me. Oscar, did you have another question?
Not really. I don't have a question at the moment, and I'm just thankful and appreciate your contributions at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Sarah. Sarah, come out. If you can unmute.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, and Happy New Year to all of us. I would wish to say that I'm challenged, that Miriam, you are here walking into these villages, and some of us who are still energetic are not even able to give a little bit of information about Quakerism. So that is a challenge that I'm picking up today. And personally, I was not born a Quaker. I joined the Quaker church after marriage. And I remember there's a time somebody asked me, which church do you go to? And I told him, Friends Church Quaker. And the reply that he gave me was a very challenging one also. Because you're the people who, no matter what happens, you remain to be friends. Whether they wrong you, it doesn't matter. What matters is your friends. So it kept me wondering, am I in the right church? Did I make a mistake of leaving the church that I was born into and getting into another faith that I don't know anything about? So it really pushed me, and luckily enough, I was able to join a level 1 class where I learned about you are my friend if you do what I command you to do. And I think now I have enough confidence to tell somebody that I am a Quaker. And I've had a very confused Christian life, if I may say, because when I was in high school, I learned in a PAG church, Pentecostal Assembly of God School. And I used to hear people talk about friends, the way they are slow, their music is boring, they don't have events in church. And I was, why do people go to such a church? When I was being brought up, we used to go to New Apostolic Church. It is equally same to Friends Church, but we used to have activities in Sunday school, we used to do dramas, we used to have parties and children will come and dance. I enjoyed Sunday school as a child. So I was like, why do people go to such a boring church? But staying in this church, I have learned that it is not what people say. And thank you so much for this, because I believe somebody somewhere will come across this information and they will have a different opinion of what Quakerism is. Again, I would wish to know, and thank you, Judith, for the effort that you're putting in. You said you invited some people from outside Kenya. Miriam has told us a little bit about Kenya, and we're hoping to hear more from the collection they have. Mm-hmm. I would wish to know about Uganda, Tanzania, and Burundi. And because they are very close to Kenya and it is not really that expensive, I wouldn't mind joining any of the Sunday school events around, especially Tanzania and Uganda, so that if I'm going to learn more about Sunday school and children ministry, I'll be glad to accept an invite. Otherwise, have a blessed day and a blessed night for those of us in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. We're also trying to gather stuff from Uganda and Tanzania as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I can turn it back to you, Beth. Oh, or here. Who's the techno person who had a question? Can they unmute and speak? The one who's under a banana tree. We can't hear you. Can you turn your unmute button?
Gladys.
Mm-hmm. You might have a poor connection.
I would like to recommend that actually it's good for Sunday school teachers to meet and interact, share ideas, share experiences, so that we can better the experiences of our children also, so that we can know more about the Quakerism, about the origin, how it came into East Africa, at Kaimosi in particular, so that when we teach the children, we also give them that history so that they'll be passing it on to the other children in future, than just leaving the information in the archives, and not all of us may reach the archives to know. So if we share the experiences, visit each other, interact, share experience, I think that will be good for the Quaker church in future. And then we have many activities, as the lady has said, so that our children can avoid being bored. Because as she says, it is true, many people say the church is boring, they don't have many activities going on. But young children actually like to make activities, use materials which they can touch, manipulate, and have different experiences that attract their attention. You know, small children do not like listening. They like doing things practically and seeing them. So I recommend that maybe as we continue with these discussions, we'll also find out how to make materials from locally available materials. And even though if we share with other communities like those from Tanzania and Uganda, we know what materials they have, and we bring them here to our children in Kenya. They'll be very interested to watch such things. Thank you very much. I'm so happy today. I've reached here. I'm on this platform. I've participated for the first time. I pray that I continue and we grow a Sunday Church School in Musingo. Thank you.
We didn't get your name and where you're from.
Gladys Haluhi from Musingo, Sunday Church School.
Great.
Thank you.
We will be, I know Judith has been working, trying to form a workshop for Sunday school teachers sometime in the next year or so when we can gather again. We had the first one, but we're hoping to get another. So that if you can
Marian,
yeah.
Marian, we are thinking of March or April to have the meeting in Nairobi, QREC Training Center. So we are still planning with the aginator, and we are coming up with the topics and the facilitators of the meeting. The time we are through, we are going to communicate to the teachers. Then we are going to include even Melinda so that she can do the presentation of godly play and faith and play. So when we are through, we'll be communicating very soon.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank
Do
you.
make sure your name and contacts are with Judith, so you can get information about it.
Thank you.
I have a WhatsApp of all of them. I have about 150 teachers, and I'm adding the one from Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania, and any other African country that I can be able to reach to, especially the Sunday school teachers. So we have been in communication with the Burundi teacher. I think he is on. He said he is going to join with other teachers, but they are going to share their screen. So after this, I'll be communicating to him to see how many were able to join. Then we will see way forward as we continue. Thank you.
Wonderful. Marian?
Yeah.
Could I just mention that we're creating some coloring pages with Agneta Njairu's son, Edgar, who is a professional artist. And some of the themes of the pictures are these luminous Quakers from East Africa. So we hope that we can create supporting materials to go along with the stories and the lessons that are coloring pages of contemporary friends from around the world. And because Edgar is in East Africa, that's where we're starting our illustration series from. So there's something else to look forward to.
Thank you, Beth.
And also to add on the same, we will getting more information from David Miller. He had said he has some information of Quakers in Malawi. So as we gather this information, we are gathering information from all of Africa. So David Miller, we will be conducting David Miller to give us information about Malawi, France, Quakers, how they started and how they've been moving on, because he said he has some information from Malawi. David Miller from Canada.
Montreal. Beth, I think we're probably about ready to
All right.
session unless there's some other urgent question.
Hey, any friends, any last questions? Well, friends, thank you so much for being in our circle today, for joining us. We always say we are all teachers and we are all learners. Next week, we'll have a workshop at the same time, starting 10 a.m. Eastern. And Oscar Lagusa Malande, who is on the faculty of Friends Theological College, will be sharing with us about nurturing strong Quaker roots in our teens. And our special guests will be some of the seminarians, the young seminarians from FTC, with stories about how they began their Quaker journeys and what we can learn from those. All right. Friends, shall we close with a moment of prayer? Holy One, we bring gratitude and joy and hearts filled with your blessings to this moment. Thank you for our Quaker family around the world and for the ability to gather with them and talk and discover more ways to share our experiences of your grace and your faith in our lives, and how that might illuminate the paths of others. Bless each of us in our activities this weekend and in the coming week, that our lives may reflect your love and your compassion and your glory in the world around us. Amen. Thank you, friends.
Thank you too. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And have a good night, those from Africa.
Thank you. Have a good night and a good day.
Thank you. God bless you. Jenny,
Thank you. Have a good day and a good night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, friends.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you and God
Okay.